Towns can be eerie, and for some towns, they might have the facade of pleasant, but in subtle ways can be very creepy. It might not be obvious because it just looks like an ordinary town, but sometimes it just has that spooky vibe. I'm sure we've all heard about cursed dolls and haunted houses. Well, in this video, we're looking into the bigger spectrum. We'll be showing you 5 abandoned ghost towns that will make you shiver. But before we get into the video, you know the routine. Like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell for future updates. This is General District. Number 5. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Starting with number 5, we have Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia, a former mining town, was once filled with families and business owners. But in 1962, a fire started to break out in a strip mine beneath the town. The people who lived there wanted to fix the illegal dumping that was happening. So in the hopes of fixing the problem, they built a 50-foot deep pit. But this became another problem when the pit became loaded and full. To fix the problem, the people had enough of it and started to burn the whole thing to ashes. But this resulted in another problem when a giant blaze of hellfire started to break out. They burned the pit without knowing that underneath the town was a mine shaft that allowed the fire to spread all over the entire town. Ever since the fire started, fires still burn under parts of this forgotten town. This has been happening for 50 years. The underground hellfire eventually caused the people to leave town. Then in 1983, the government allocated $42 million to relocate residents to safer locations. But most people gladly moved away at this point, but a few folks remained. The government fought them and evicted them from their homes, and by October 2013, only 10 people remained in the small town. Centralia has been closed for years, but it has become a macabre attraction to visitors who want to see the coal remains. Number 4. Underground Seattle, Washington. Coming in at number 4 is Underground Seattle, Washington. The founders of Seattle created everything in the city, big and small, by using only wood. But the problem was the founders were not engineers. They were just ordinary people with no town building experience. Seattle was known to be the rainiest place in the United States because it's located by the coast. Because there was no proper drainage, the city would usually be damp and flooded, which resulted in mold growth and diseases. On June 6 of 1889, summer came to Seattle. There was a man named Victor Claremont who owned a woodworking shop. He had an apprentice named John Back who was at that time making a homemade pot of animal glue. John accidentally dropped the glue, which started a fire. He tried to stop the fire by pouring water on it, which made the fire even worse. The fire department didn't arrive until after 30 minutes, meaning the fire spread to different stores nearby. Before they knew it, 33 blocks had completely turned to ash. People were evacuated and businesses were destroyed. In the mid-19th century, there was an entire abandoned city living just beneath the surface of Seattle's Pioneer Square, and all the buildings were made of wood. The losses were estimated to be over $8 million, and almost all of the town's center was decimated. After the fire, the leaders of the city decided that everything to be built should be made of bricks and be placed high above 22 feet. Over the years, stores and homes were built above the city. One by one, everyone moved to the city above and abandoned the underground city, which eventually became a ghost town. Number 3. Hashima Island, Japan. Hashima was known as another densely populated city in Japan. Over 5,000 people were said to have lived there when it was at its peak. In the 18th century, coal mining was the basis of the economy. The coal that was in Takashima had high quality. Later on, reserves were developed to neighboring islands, with Ashima Island included. At the end of the 19th century, the island was sold to Mitsubishi. The owner of Mitsubishi built buildings that had the island look similar to a battleship from afar. Since the resemblance was strong, reporters called the island Gunkajima, also known as the Island of Ships. Buildings, stores, and homes were built on this small island. The island was small and in the middle of the ocean, far away from nature. Since the islands were so small, residential houses were squeezed with other buildings, and the roads were not very roomy. Housing, electricity, and water were free of workers, and every resident had parts in public works. When it came to food, fresh water, and clothes, the people were dependent on the outer world. Whenever it rained or big waves from the ocean occurs, the island gets flooded with water. There was no means of transportation because there was not enough space, so everybody had to walk. As time passed by, coal was referred to as a dirty fuel. The government closed the coal mine around the country. Mitsubishi reduced workers from Hashima, and thousands were transferred. On January 15th of 1974, coal mines were officially closed. After 3 months, everyone on the island left. Ever since then, Hashima has been abandoned. Number 2. Haotuan, China. Number 2 is a fishing village, also known as Hatuana, China. The village was once known as a prosperous village. In the 1980s, over 3,000 residents were living there. However, in the 1990s, over 2,000 fishermen and their families left when the small bay became increasingly unable to meet the growing fish industry's needs. Decades passed, only a handful of people are living in the village, and forces of nature took over the abandoned buildings and houses. Some of the villagers now find income in tourism, however. Number 1. Chernobyl, Ukraine. The place where the only accident in history of commercial nuclear power where radiation-related fatalities occurred. It was initially a young, vibrant, and wealthy place until the nuclear meltdown happened. In 1986, the reactor of the nuclear plant exploded due to a defective reactor design that was operated with inadequately trained personnel. Back before the incident happened, Soviet Union invested heavily in nuclear power after World War II. The V. Lenin nuclear power station, 10 miles to the north of Chernobyl, had become operational in 1977. On the 26th of October in 1989, a series of operator actions, including the disabling of automatic shutdown mechanisms, preceded the attempt. By the time that the operator moved to shut down the reactor, it was in an unstable condition. A peculiar design of the control rods caused a dramatic power surge as they were inserted into the reactor. The interaction of very hot fuel with the cooling water led to fuel fragmentation along with rapid steam production and an increase in pressure. The accident destroyed the Chernobyl 4 reactor, killing 30 operators and firemen within 3 months, and the population of 50,000 people was evacuated after the explosion happened. Now, it is a hunting destination for tourists exploring the Chernobyl exclusion zone. So what do you think of the 5 abandoned ghost towns that will make you shiver? We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And if you're new to the channel, thumbs up, subscribe, and ring that notification bell for future videos. Until next time.